evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate. Charles Mangushampagi. On Tuesday, Uganda will mark 56 years since gaining independence, but also on 11th, the Makerere University School of Law will be marking 50 years since its establishment. We'll take stock of these two important anniversaries with the team of the guests that I have in studio. I need to apologize for the second week running. My colleague, Onapito Ekomoloit, is not in studio. He's been taking a sabbatical from his other day job, and therefore he's unavailable. I think he must be watching us from Asalatap, village somewhere in Amuria, in Soroti, eastern Uganda, if he's not on holiday somewhere else. What has been the journey of Uganda for 56 years? If you are 56 years old, and you're this country, and you look at yourself, would you feel proud of who you are? Would you feel somewhat uncomfortable with who you are? And within the next 10 years, countries on the African continent, almost all of them, save for maybe South Africa and Namibia, South Sudan, and you might say to an extent Eritrea and Djibouti, will begin marking the end of colonialism across the African continent. The colonialists were in Uganda, for example, for a combined total of 68 years. If you look at 56, subtract 68 from 56, you have a very short period of time, and you'd say, can we continue blaming the colonialists for the troubles we face today? Let me introduce the team that I have after that very long introduction. Starting with, from the extreme end, I have Mr. Okidi Christopher. Mr. Okidi, you're most welcome.
Thank you.
Okidi just finished law school and the Law Development Center, would that be correct?
Yes.
What are you doing at the moment?
Currently, I am, as you know, I am National Youth Leader of the Democratic Party, so I'm greatly engaged with the Democratic Party.
Okay, and the Democratic Party was available at independence?
Yes, it is actually, currently the Democratic Party is the oldest political party in Uganda, and
started
actually
in
Africa
1954.
it's only second to the ANC.
Yes,
Yeah.
Founded in 1954?
Yeah, 1954.
1954, very nice to have you. We also have with us from the Makerere School of Law, Assistant Lecturer, Department of Commercial Law, School of Law, Makerere University, and legal practitioner or law practitioner, Mr. Ivan Ngoro. You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, viewers.
We have from the Uganda Government Media Center, Josepha Jabo. Josepha, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
And we have from the Great Lakes Institute, Great Lakes Institute for?
Strategic studies.
Strategic Studies.
Yeah.
Please, we have Godba Tumshabe. Godba, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening, our viewers.
You know, I was suspecting that the last time we had you here, you were possibly working with TDA.
Yes.
And we might need to investigate whether you're not in a new formation today.
As someone who works on policy, I actually would work with a range of ideas and formations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice to have you. So I have on the panel three lawyers, actually. Mr. Ngoro, Mr. Okidi, and Mr. Tumshabe. Joseph, what's your specialization?
I'm a public affairs assistant writer in the Print and Research Department at Uganda Media Center.
Very nice to have you. Gentlemen and lady, I want to start with asking a very broad question. Uganda will be 56 on Tuesday. That's the ceremonial day. We actually would have started the celebrations today. If we need a celebration, we would have started the commemoration, if it is a commemoration. Now start with you, Mr. Kidi. Possibly, and with all due respect, possibly the youngest person on the panel tonight. What does this mean for you?
Yeah.
Now that you're even active with the Democratic Party?
Yeah. I think, you know, independence actually, African countries hoped that independence would usher in independence. It would actually solve all the social, political, and economic questions. And actually what we see is that 56 years now. And if you were to take stock, you would actually find that 56 years have actually been years where we could actually say that we are still asking ourselves whether we are really independent. Because, first of all, if you're to look at the politics, if you follow recently the political issues in Uganda, you would actually find that there's still a lot of foreign influence in our politics. A lot of countries in the West determine actually how we are supposed to do our politics.
How exactly do you mean? We are
President
running
Museveni-
through our third constitution, if I think.
Yeah.
Is it our third constitution? We had the independence constitution.
Yeah, the independence
We had the
constitution.
review of that constitution midway, I think 1966.
Yeah.
The Pigeonhole Constitution, and we
then
have the
there's
1995
like-
Constitution.
Yeah, there
If
was
you're
also-
running through your third constitution, Mr. Ngolo, aren't you independent? Wouldn't you say?
Well, thank you, Charles, and thank you again for inviting me. Very briefly, my observation is that in national celebrations as this, we use it as an opportunity to carry out some kind of audit. So if you look back from 1962 to date, I think I would say there's work in progress. I would say that we are increasingly seeing aspects of participation by citizens, and that is provided for in our constitution. So yes, there may be areas which may need improvement, and that is why my statement was that there will always be work in progress. Yeah.
Okay, Josepha, let me put the same question to you. I always keep looking at the Independence Monument, and the Independence Monument is represents a mother whose body is actually tied. There's a kind of a rope running around her, and she's only hoisting a baby up. So the freedom is for the baby, and that baby would be Uganda, and that baby will be 56 years. 56 years on Tuesday. And my question is, if you're trying to interpret that Independence Monument, the question you'll be asking yourself, can a mother who's still in bondage bring forth a child who's free? So like Okidi says, that there is a lot of foreign influence in how we do and run our politics here, how we live, then was there independence for this country? Is this country independent?
I believe Uganda is independent because we determine our own policies and programs. We have an independent parliament. So I wouldn't say that we are tied to the UK or any other foreign country. What we do receive is aid, and we do receive advice from time to time, but we still make decisions independently.
Godba, what's your take? Uganda at 56.
No, of course, Uganda, if you think about what would be expected of a country that is independent, you're looking at you're thinking of independence in terms of economic independence, in terms of political independence, in terms of the degree of freedoms that you exercise as a people, the freedoms that you enjoy as a people, as a country. You are standing globally in terms of the international community. What, how do you stand? What kind of achievements do you project as a country? Now, of course, as a country, we've if you compare ourselves with a human being, you can have someone who is born and grows up to 56. Now, human beings who have grown up to 56, they can be evaluated. There are those that have succeeded economically, politically, and otherwise. There are those that you can say they are average. There are those you can say, oh, what did this guy do with his 56 years? And I think that for Uganda, you can say that we are average. In the sense that you want to look for you want to ask yourself and say, what are the big things that we have accomplished as a nation? Because there are so many small things that you can count on and say, we've had this and this and that. But what are the landmarks that we have accomplished as a nation? And I think when you look at the history of this country, you see a country that has been fighting wars for almost the last 30 years. You see a country that has almost the first 24 years of independence, or the last 25, we had leaders shooting themselves, shooting each other in and out of power. We have the last 33 years where you have had President Museveni as the president, succeeding himself all the way through. And we've been having regular elections, but those elections have become more problematic, more violent, and more monetized. In terms of the economy, yes, you can say, oh, our GDP has grown. We are seeing all kinds of forms, or different forms of infrastructure, being built. But when you look at if you look at the most recent statistics, poverty statistics, you will see that in northern, and these are statistics for 2016, 2017. You realize that in eastern Uganda, in central and west, poverty levels have gone up. The statistics show that we have only had marginal decrease in poverty levels in northern Uganda, and probably because of the various interventions that have been put in place. So, in other words, you can say Uganda is a country that has a mixed record of progress, unfulfilled commitments, and broken promises.
We will come to audit what exactly that means. What is the source of it? We're just receiving information. We will be confirming and we'll share with our viewers that the former Attorney General, Peter Nyombi, has passed on this evening at a clinic in Kampala. Apparently, he suffered hypertension and was rushed to a clinic where he has apparently passed on. We will share the details as we get them to clarify exactly what it is that we know as we go on with the show. But that information is coming in just now that he might have passed on about less than 30 minutes ago. And at a time when we're discussing law school at 50 and we're discussing Uganda at 56, the passing of a former Attorney General, and I believe an alumni of Makerere University, would be a very, very sad thing to deal with at this moment. I wanted to stay with you, Godba, a little bit more. You have scanned across the country. Socio-economic interaction actually is under audit. Politics of this country is under audit, which is the democratic journey, which was the main objective of the independence struggle. Economic empowerment, economic being of Ugandans is a subject for debate and other aspects. Mr. Okidi, your party was here before independence?
Yes.
Fought for independence?
Yeah.
56 years down the road?
Yeah.
Some people have called it the dead party. Other people think it is rising again. The other day you had a conference in Masaka, that didn't end very well. Is Uganda traveling the same journey as the Democratic Party, would you say?
Yeah, first of all, the Masaka conference ended very well.
Very well. We saw people
ended,
clashing.
No, it was just a few people who had particular differences. But the broader objective of the reunion was actually met. Just like you said, the Democratic Party was founded in 1954 and has been a key player in the political, economic and social sphere of Uganda in shaping it. Because I know many people blame the Democratic Party that ever since 1961 it has never acquired power. And that could be perhaps the reason why some say it is the dead party. But you know, like Karl Marx said, a political party is not only about power, it is also about speaking for the people. And when you look at the various journey, the constitutional journey of Uganda, the Democratic Party has really played a major role. You remember the Semogerere and the Zachary Olum case, that was particularly challenging certain undemocratic functions of institutions like parliament, and the Democratic Party actually played a very big role in ensuring that Uganda becomes a multi-party democracy. Because ever since President Museveni came, they actually termed their kind of democracy as the movement system of democracy. But the Democratic Party has always been fighting so that the political space is opened, so that multi-party political players come in, and with that kind of political participation of various actors, perhaps Ugandans can be given a chance to choose from that basket of multi-party politics, which particular institution can offers a good idea to lead the country. So I think that has been the journey of the Democratic Party, but also...
How does that relate to the journey of Uganda?
Yeah, the journey of Uganda. For example, you know, the question of nationalism has been a very important issue in Uganda. Uganda is one country that has very many ethnic groups. And as you know, the Democratic Party is an organization that actually came out solidly to mobilize nationalist spirit. You remember Benedicto Chiwanuka, even when he was in Uganda, he has actually been at the center of ensuring that, yeah, let us agree that we have been having various kingdoms that made up this country. So how do we consolidate this country? How do we consolidate so that we can coexist? And I think nationalism has been a very big question in Uganda. Even as we talk, the 56 years, currently we might be asking ourselves that 56 years, have we managed to achieve nationhood?
Have we?
Have we? For me, actually, I think we haven't managed to achieve nationhood.
Because I want to come to you quickly, because a lot of the issues around this country, an institution like the School of Law at Makerere University, which is also marking 56 years, meaning the School of 50 years.
50 years.
Meaning the School of Law was born just 6 years after Uganda was born.
True.
And we run we've tried to run by the law since independence. The question of whose law and how we've managed to keep ourselves within that law. What's been the role of the law school, the School of Law at Makerere University, towards in Uganda's democratic journey?
Thanks, Charles. As you rightly pointed out, the law school will be celebrating 50 years of its existence this week. We've been having a number of activities to commemorate that very historic event in our life. In terms of contribution, we view our role as an institution which is mandated to teach, to train, and also to carry out research in areas of law. So we think that by putting emphasis on training and research in aspects of law, we are able to assist in the formulation of policies in this country. And I think we've done that quite well in terms of research. We provide research-based information, and this has played a significant role. And that is the commitment which we want to pledge to all of us and all Ugandans, that we will continue to play that role to our very best. Yeah.
Thank you. We need to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we will have a little bit more detail, hopefully, on the breaking news that I shared a while ago. But we'll continue the discussion of Uganda at 56 and the School of Law at Makerere University at 50, which will be... there was a moot which was presided over by judges at Makerere University on Friday, which has been part of the series of activities marking this, what many will agree is been an epic journey over the last 50 years of the School of Law at Makerere University, and will be crowned on Friday? On Friday, the 11th, dinner, yes. With a dinner. We'll be right back. Still watching The Fourth Estate, and I need to remind our viewers that we received information earlier in the first segment of the show of the passing on of former Attorney General Peter Nyombi. He apparently died of heart failure at a clinic in Kampala. Details are still scanty at the moment, but we'll keep sharing with you as and when we get more details. Bernard Imperi is watching us and says, Charles, independence is worth celebrating because we have definitely moved some steps since Independence Day. My only concern is the pace at which we are moving. we are way far from where we ought to be. We can do better. Bernard Mpeirwe was watching us. Onapito is watching us from Asalatap and says the signal is very clear. Ask the lawyers what they would say to those who argue that all our post-independence problems have been the making of lawyers, because every bad law has been drafted and defended by lawyers. Starting with you, Godber. You're a lawyer.
No, I think that actually the lawyers, you have to agree that some of the most eminent persons, men and women in this country, have actually been lawyers. They have made phenomenal contribution to this country. But of course,
and there have been a phenomenal disaster to the country also.
Onapito has a point, because there are quite a number of lawyers who have, many of them have been attorney generals, who have actually really been a big problem for the country, because they, instead of acting as lawyers to the government and citizens, they normally acted like politicians. Because when you interpret the law by just putting on a political lens, then you remove the neutrality of the law. And I think that has also been done by politicians, but also by lawyers. But remember that laws are drafted by lawyers. They are debated by everybody in parliament. So our parliament is actually a configuration of all the professionals that you can think of, and they are enacted there. In court, lawyers do not make decisions. No. Lawyers who appear before judges, their job is to argue the law and argue the facts. And in fact, at law school, we are taught that we are officers of court. Our responsibility is to help the court reach a fair judgment. So you present the law to the best of your understanding, and present all the authorities, and present the evidence, and put the facts on the table, and then you let the judges decide.
So how have the lawyers in this country, have they exonerated themselves in terms of doing exactly what you're talking about?
I mean, you can. For me, I would say they have exonerated themselves. My only challenge, actually, I think my only problem with lawyers is that they do too much lawyering and forget the social justice objective that lawyers are supposed to defend and protect. Because I believe...
You're a product of Makerere School of Law, aren't you?
Absolutely. I was at law school from 1990 to 1993.
So you're part of the celebration of 50 years?
Absolutely. And in fact, the law school is only one...
And that's tied at the hip.
I'm 1 year older than the law school.
Yes, and the law school is tied at the hip with Uganda's independence, isn't it, you would say?
Oh, they're conjoined. They are conjoined.
Yes.
I think, and by the way, we should also acknowledge that the legal profession, its relevance to our political and socio-economic situation has actually been diminishing compared to the history. The quality of lawyers, everybody will tell you the quality of the lawyers have changed from independence to date. That's why you see that for now, for you to get admission to the Law Development Center, you have to sit special examinations.
No, actually, to get admission to Makerere School of Law, you survived, because you have to go through a pre-entry process.
Actually, that's my point. That also reflects on our journey, that what we are seeing more of these institutions and practices almost becoming like a vote of no confidence in our systems. Because at our time, for you to qualify to go to law school, you were actually considered to be the cream of the students who were doing art subjects. And there was no question about you going to law school. But now you have guys who have they have distinctions all through, and then they have to be subjected to some special examinations. And I think what that tells me is that is a vote of no confidence in the education system that we are running now, 56 years after independence. You finish law school, and then the Law Development Center thinks that you're actually not qualified, or they have to test your ability to do LDC.
No,
That is a vote of no confidence in the
Yes, it's the
law
cycle.
school.
It's the cycle I talked about. That you finish A level, and you have to be tested
Yes.
whether your A level marks qualifies you to get into the School of Law or not.
Yeah.
Which is a whole standards test that the country faces. Joseph, I want to bring it to you.
Yes, actually.
The crisis, this argument about why do I have to sit an examination before I enter law school or I enter the Law Development Center is the same thing being discussed about the doctors we produce as a country, the accountants we produce, the engineers we produce. There was a time we had a crisis in this city especially. Buildings were falling down every other day and people asking, what kind of engineers are we producing? You find that in a discussion about our parliament, people are saying, what kind of parliament do we have? You find that among universal primary education, universal secondary education institutions and the education, what kind of teachers are teaching, what kind of pupils or students are they teaching? That is, for me, the summary of Uganda at 56. We're questioning almost everything about us as a country.
Okay. Charles, I have no problem with pre-entry exams because it keeps people on their toes and it safeguards standards. But however, I'd like to respond to what Godba said earlier about civil wars in Uganda. Civil wars are a thing of the past. Right now, Uganda is very secure to the point where people can wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work or school. There are no roadblocks. There's no curfew in place. And Uganda remains a safe haven for peace in the region. We have, according to United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Uganda right now has 1.4 million refugees, and it's predicted this number will increase to 1.8 million by the end of 2018. And these refugees who keep coming here every day wouldn't be coming if this country was not secure. So, of course, this doesn't mean we have the capacity as a country to cater for them on our own. We do receive aid from international agencies and NGOs. For example, earlier this week, the UK donated £210 million over the next 5 years to the Office of the Prime Minister to support refugees. Because government's position is that we should all stand in solidarity with refugees because no one chooses to be a refugee. So my point is, Uganda is secure. Of course, we have instances where you might have a skirmish here and there from some rebels, but we have put down rebels. UPDF has put down rebels, insurgencies from rebels and terrorists, and that's why investor confidence is still high.
But Joseph, somebody would ask that the story of Uganda is not different from the story of the African continent. But we walked this journey, we should have walked away from this 56 years ago.
We should have walked away from...
away from wars. Actually, there were no wars between 1900 until 1962 when the colonialists left. There had been no major wars in the period before. The major wars you'd have talked about would be the war between, the war to bring Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom under the colonial fold, which ran for 6 years. You talk about the not significant, not major wars against Kabaka Mwanga when he started speaking a different language from what the colonialists had expected him to be speaking. And you don't have a lot of that. Kenya, for example, across the border, which would be celebrating, Kenya got independence in 1960.
I think 63.
In 63.
Yeah.
Tanzania got independence in 1961.
Yeah.
We are around the same years. Ghana was the first, I think, in 1959. 1959? 56. 1956. Yeah. So if you take a broader look at the African continent, you'd find that the question of wars, why have wars persisted even after we got independence? Why are we struggling economically? Pouring in 1.4 million refugees is not a small number by any stretch of imagination. We have, there are about 500,000 refugees, I think, are coming in from the Democratic Republic of Congo alone. The 1.4 million you're quoting is possibly the number from, about 1 million from South Sudan alone. South Sudan. when you put together the numbers from South Sudan, from the Democratic Republic of Congo, we still have Rwandan refugees here. We have refugees
Somalis.
from Burundi.
Yeah.
We have refugees from Somalia. We have refugees from the Central African Republic. We have refugees from across the Arab world, by the way. I think we also have
Absolutely.
a few Pakistani refugees who are here in this country. Yes. So providing a safe haven is one question. But auditing, why are we in that crisis, just not as Uganda, but as the African continent that was colonized? What does that mean? What does it say about us and our proclamation of independence?
I think it just re-emphasizes the fact that we are a safe haven. They wouldn't be coming here if they didn't feel secure here. In fact, many South Sudanese refugees say they don't want to go back to Uganda once they're here. They have testified to that on television during interviews.
Yes,
that they
but
don't want to go back. So
the
that,
reason we have these refugees coming, the reason we're accepting these refugees is simply because we have been refugees before. We poured refugees into the Democratic Republic of Congo. We poured refugees into Kenya. We sent refugees to other countries in the world. And we think that being a landlocked country that's been locked in wars for many years, we owe a debt of gratitude to other people.
Charles, you're missing Josepha's point. Josepha's point is that as a country, 56 years later, we are stable enough that we are able to act as a safe haven for those who are running out from trouble. I think that is her point. And to that extent, I think she has a point. But I think the problem with that argument is to fail to understand that for us as a country, we are actually, we are also refugees in our own country. If you think carefully, I look at Uganda as some very big prison where our forces are almost now acting like prison warders. Why am I saying this? If you look at the environment that we're operating in today, first of all, I think that Uganda is only one country on this continent where we give medals for killing each other. That you've had all these celebrations, people being given medals, Katonga, Nile, and whatever. What did they do? The only thing they did is that they fought one group and another group and another group, and they took over power. And you get medals. Remember that other than the 1979 war and probably the attack by the ADF from DRC, we haven't
in
had...
1996.
Yes, 1996. We haven't had any major battles of foreign aggression against us as a country. So even when Josepha says, oh, we put down rebels and put down this group and the other, we are basically a country that has been in conflict all this long, because
Ugandans fighting against
fighting against Ugandans. And you see, I keep on explaining to people that there is a difference between security and stability as compared to peace. In a country like Uganda that has been having these troubles, you want a government that is able to establish security and stability. Now, security and stability are simply a preconditions for establishing peace. Peace means something more than just the absence of war. And I think what we've been able to do as a country now is to establish some semblance of security and stability. But of course, even when you say that, if you tell the guys in the Rwenzururu where a massacre happened in our faces, with women and children killed, or if you say the same thing to the people of northern Uganda who were under a civil war for over 20 years, or so many situations across the country, and I think that Eastern Uganda, my view is that as a country, we need to look back, reflect, and say, actually, we have been so unfair to each other that we need to come back together and say, let's reflect about the journey beyond these 56 years. Okay. But to sit back and celebrate and say we are okay, I think is to fail to acknowledge the challenges that we have faced as a country.
Okay, Crispin Kaheri is watching us from Brussels, and he says the live streaming is on point. Thank you, Crispy, but he has some comments. He says, Our own big men have defaulted on the promises they gave their citizens 56 years ago. Every election year, bad checks are issued to the citizenry, and when the rubber meets the road, they are barely honored. So technically speaking, figures, statistics, etc., Uganda is doing fairly okay. But substantively speaking, there may not be much to write home about. Mr. Ngoro, would you want to pick this up?
Well, I just want to comment briefly on the refugee issue. I think the first observation is that the refugee issue globally will always be with us for many reasons. People will always seek refuge in safe havens. We've seen in Western Europe people running from the Middle East and etc. But I think as a Ugandan, and in light of what has been said over and again about refugees in this country, I think I look forward to seeing better management of refugees so that the benefits which accrue to me as a citizen of this country, as a Ugandan, are not encroached upon by someone who just came here for temporal shelter. So I would like to see that capacity strengthened so that we are able to keep stock of who is who, where they're coming from, and you know, all these kinds of details. So to me, it zeroes down on our policy framework on the issue of refugees. You know, to keep them within, you know, that status, so that you don't get more benefit than you are entitled to, because that in the long run perhaps is what you then begin to hear Ugandans talking about.
At a broader level, Mr. Ngoro, would you find a problem with the fact that you don't have, like in Europe with America, opportunity seekers, but you have people fleeing insecurity? For me, it doesn't matter really from what we discussed earlier. All these countries have just got independence around the same time, because they also got colonized from that
85 Berlin
that Berlin Conference. Colonized, partitioned, the Scrum and Partition of Africa. Happened at the same time. People sitting around the table in Europe decided, this is my portion, that's your portion, this is the other's portion. Then they did some resharing, sharing the spoils of war after the First World War and the Second World War, when Germany lost its possessions on the African continent and in the few of their allies. Now, but if you look at it broadly, that yes, you might provide a safe haven, that is the after effect of what was happening behind the scenes. The question is, why are you still mad in conflict? Whether you are, I was trying to check when Sudan, before it broke up, got independence, when DR Congo became independent, when Uganda became independent, when Rwanda became independent, Burundi, Somalia, does it really matter that the source, that you're providing a safe haven because you're an enclave, an oasis of peace for some time, when just a decade before, you're also troubled and you're running away to other countries? Does that say anything about our independence journey? As black people, if I should use, I've been trying to avoid that.
Charles, I hope I pick you correctly. I think for me, the refugee question vis-a-vis the Ugandan interest must be tackled in the within, you know, in the context of Uganda. I don't think it's the right approach for us to, as a sovereign state, to begin questioning what is going on in another. The point I made was we should be able to welcome refugees based on our capacity. That's first. But two, to ensure that there is a legal framework which would bar any kind of manipulation from someone changing status from a refugee to
becoming a citizen.
I think for me, as a Ugandan, that's my primary concern.
Christopher, could you hold your thought for a moment? We take a break, but I'll read a message from Joseph Burite. Crispy said, we've been repeatedly written bad checks. And I believe those bad checks are written by political leaders. We will discuss that. But Burite is saying, so we can't touch Nile water without annoying Egypt due to a 1929 colonial treaty. We succeeded too. Other treaties had us prioritizing export of electric power despite domestic shortages. What are those own independent decisions that Josepha is talking about? Thanks for the show. Josepha, you need to chew on that because you might have to answer about those independent decisions when we come out of the break. You're welcome back to this last segment of the Fourth Estate. Livingston Okello is watching us and says, at an appropriate moment, please say thank you to Godba. Lubang God is good. Yeah. For his letter to Makerere University on attendance at the launch of Julius K. Nyerere Center. For me on Tuesday, I will remain indoors mourning the demise of our independence. This is an elder making that comment. Let me pick. Abdul Katuntu, Honorable Member of Parliament, is saying, rest in peace, Peter Nyombi. We had fights, but they were not personal. Let the Almighty strengthen your family at this difficult time. That's from Abdul Katuntu. I'll take a few more messages as we move along, not to distract from the discussion in here. I want to just spend a few minutes with Mr. I was coming to you, Christopher. Yes. On this chain of independence, because if you look at one narrow area, Crispin asked, have we been written bad checks repeatedly?
I think Crispin talks particularly in relation to the political leadership. And I seem to buy into his idea of bad checks, because when you look at the kind of leadership we've really had, they have really diverted from the promises they have actually made to Ugandans. Even when you look at, even when you start from the 1960s, definitely you really find some issues of bad checks with the Obote I government. Yeah, you'll find that particular corners of the country had a lot of complaints about him. For example, in 1962, you know the reason why Amin, for example, decided to come up with this 18-point program to overthrow the government of Obote. And one of the reasons was that there was he had a particular support or priority in terms of economic development to his ethnic group. The same also came when Amin took over power. Of course, you know, West Nile definitely became his priority. And other parts of the country will definitely say that, yeah, I think we have got a raw deal out of this regime of Obote, including Buganda, which actually embraced him. You know how Buganda particularly embraced Idi Amin. Even when we talk about Museveni currently, there are parts of the country who think, I think we have got a raw deal out of the Museveni regime. So for me, I think Crispin is right to say that leaders have actually given a bad check to Ugandans. In 1986, President Museveni said, this is not a mere change of guards, it is a fundamental change. But many years after, 32 years after, Ugandans are still wondering, is this the fundamental change that Museveni promised? Because there's actually no difference in terms of respect for human rights, even electoral democracy. There is no difference between the kind of elections of 1980 that led him to the bush and the kind of elections that Museveni himself conducts.
But maybe Chris has narrowed down Crispy's point.
Just later, I wanted to have Josepha respond to that because it's fairly broad. The question of the leadership that we have had since independence, you can't just narrow it to President Museveni and the war that took him to the bush, but also the journey, the years before. the first 24 years? Have our political leaders written us bad checks?
No, I wouldn't say that. He mentioned that President Museveni has given us a raw deal. I don't think he's given us a raw deal. But I'd also like to respond to the question from the viewer who asked about electricity generation in this country. By the end of, I'll just quote Simon Kasiante. I spoke to him earlier this week. He's a manager of corporate affairs at Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited, and he told me earlier this week that by the end of UEB's tenure, there was 5% electricity connectivity in this country, but right now, connectivity in Uganda is at 24%. So that's a significant jump. Now, it's because of this electricity generation that we're able to industrialize. President Museveni has always had it as part of his vision to industrialize this country. And in recent months, he's been commissioning many factories. For example, he commissioned the Sachi Technology Assembly Plant in Ntinda Industrial Area. This assembles flat irons, television sets, refrigerators. He commissioned the Simba Cement Factory in Tororo, and many other ceramics. I could go on and on. Now, this is good because it shows investor confidence, and also it helps to lower the unemployment rate, because of course Ugandans are being employed in these factories.
Just a little bit. As a Ugandan, do you think that's where the country should be at 56 years? Should we be celebrating the president opening a ceramics factory or
various factories?
Yes, or an assembly plant. The president was complaining that he opened. He launched 2 tea factories in Bushenyi. Then he launched those other factories. And is that where the country should be? Is that what the country should be celebrating? That 26% in 56 years are the people connected to the national grid, to electricity, 56 years later?
We do have a rural electrification program ongoing, but there are 2 things which Uganda can be proud of. It's not only industrialization, but also infrastructure development. And in addition, the revival of Ugandan Airlines is a big one.
Which one, Joseph?
Early next year, between March and April 2019, Uganda Airlines will be back in the skies. We also have the Kampala-Entebbe Expressway, which I'm sure you know about. Then in January 2019, the Kampala flyover will begin. We have expansion of Entebbe Airport because of increased traffic. We have construction of Kabale International Airport, which is also known as Hoima International Airport. This is going to help support the oil industry because we expect to harness oil by 2020. The New Nile Bridge across the River Nile will be commissioned on October 2017. So then there are many more, standard gauge railway and so on and so forth. So my point is that these are 2 areas we can be proud of as Ugandans. Industrialization and infrastructure development, and it's a work in progress.
Yeah, we have very little time. We need to be getting out. We'll be getting out of here. But Ms. Ngora, I'll give you time to just speak about the 50 years of Makerere Law School of Law. Thank you.
And I just wanted to just recap the point that Crisper raised about the bad check. Actually, for me, I call it a dishonored check because I think the 1995 Constitution for me was like the check that promised Ugandan what was promised at independence, a country that is free, freedom, respect for human rights, a country that provides equal opportunity for every Ugandan, a country that you would assume that yes, 56 years later, our kids can go to school and learn, that you have all those schools, all those children in rural areas, they have the same opportunity like the kids we have in urban centers, a health care system that works. I don't think that you would want in 56 years after independence that you want to have a president who moves around town distributing money and say, I'm trying to eradicate poverty. So I think that we didn't have a bad check, but the check that we were given in 1995 has been dishonored. And that's why.
I thought a check is bad when it is dishonored.
Yes, that's what.
Yes.
That's
So
what
we
I'm
had a
saying,
bad
yeah.
check.
No,
But
no, you see, you can have a check, and then it's dishonored.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, if you call it bad because it has been dishonored,
It goes bad
I would
because
have-
it has
yeah.
been dishonored. And
Yeah,
but
yeah.
just cutting there, you've had a series of bad checks.
Yeah.
The leaders who led this country, I think Crispy's point was, the leaders who led us into independence
Yeah.
made promises, and the evidence of that. What word am I looking for? That is represented in the Independence Monument we talked about.
Yeah.
We were in bondage,
Yeah.
but now
We are free.
we are free.
Yeah.
You have a bad check
Yeah.
with the Common Man's Charter,
Mhm.
Apollo Milton Obote. You have a bad check with the 18 key points. Why Amin led a coup in Uganda in 1970, 71, 72?
71.
71.
Yeah.
You have another bad check when President Yoweri Museveni goes to the bush and tells you,
Actually, the UNLF one.
Mhm.
When
Yes,
they removed
you
Amin,
have
they
a bad
said
check
we.
with
Yeah.
UNLF
In 1979.
in 1979.
Yes.
You go into elections in December 10th, 1980,
Yeah.
with promises of things unusual, not what you had before. Obote comes back. In 1980, Museveni goes to the bush. You have those 5 years of war. And after he comes out of the bush, he reads the famous fundamental change. I think President
And
Museveni
the 10
is...
point program.
And the 10-point program.
Yeah.
I think President Museveni is grossly misquoted on that fundamental change. He never promised a fundamental change in black and white. He said, I think. People miss, I think. He says, I think what you're seeing, he said, what you're seeing is not a mere change of guard.
Yeah.
I think it is a fundamental change.
Yeah.
We are not like
So
the
you
others.
are saying he was not sure.
No, he put a disclaimer and he said, I think
Yeah.
it's not a fundamental change. So you have that 10-point program, if that represents the other check that Ugandans have received. But all these checks have been dishonored. That's what I think Crispy is trying to say, that they have been dishonored repeatedly one after another. And I think people who teach banking, Mr. Ngoro is my lecturer at the School of Law, would tell you that a bad check is a check that cannot be honored by a credit institution, isn't it?
Yes,
A bank
absolutely. Yeah,
institution. Yes.
absolutely. And just to emphasize that, I think that part of the problem is that as Ugandans, as citizens, we have really we've surrendered all our rights to people who lead us. That's why I said Uganda is like a big prison where citizens are actually the soldiers that are the army that is supposed to protect our territorial integrity become prison warders. The police that is supposed to be ensuring that we enjoy our rights, they operate like prison warders, and that's why for me I'm a strong believer in people power. That at the end of the day, where we are now, we as citizens must be able to claim our power, must be able to claim our civic rights and responsibilities until we can subject all institutions of state to the will of the citizens. Right now, I think Ugandans, if you see what happens around, Ugandans, we simply live like hostages. And that's why I think that the independence...
How do you defend that in a country that holds elections every 5 years? You
Yeah,
have
but-
more than 2 million
Yes.
elected officials in this country.
Yeah, but you see, that has been my point, Charles, that if you to conduct an election, like we saw in Arua, we've seen in, even now we are seeing in Shema where there's a by-election. I come from Ntungamo, I saw the last elections, where Ntungamo is a constituency, it's just a small town, they call it a municipality, but it's really like a trading center, where you have probably approximately 3,000 people. That you need the level of frontline deployment. The level of deployment is like you are at war to conduct an election in just a small town. That cannot be called an election. And Ugandans, we must disabuse ourselves to keep believing that we need to create the levels of deployment we see of our security forces, both police and military, to conduct an election, and we say, oh, we are having elections. Because there must be a reason why Ugandans were not able to go freely at a polling station and have fun as we vote. That you have to have armed men and women standing guard for you to be able to do an election. You must look at that and say there must be something fundamentally wrong, and we need to address it.
And it's fundamentally wrong with who?
Yeah.
With who?
Of course, with our governance, because we have leaders.
Not with Ugandans?
Not at all, because we have leaders.
You've shuffled your leadership several times.
No, we have leaders, Charles, whom we have entrusted responsibility. Because normally when leaders fail, they tell you that, oh, you are part of the failure. But when you are given leadership, like you've seen in Parliament, we elect you as members of Parliament to go to Parliament to protect our constitution. That is the primary responsibility of members of Parliament. But then they are the ones who sit, preside over the mutilation of the constitution. They are paid, money here and there to be able to.
They are Ugandans just like you, so it's a failure not just
yeah,
by
but
them.
are you saying that a member of Parliament is like my mother who sits down in Ntungam?
No, I'm saying that a member of Parliament is like you, who sits in Kampala.
Yeah,
Yes.
and he's been sent to Kampala because he's a member of Parliament, and he cannot deny that responsibility.
Okay, we'll come back to the independence debate. Let's just focus a little bit on Makerere School of Law for a moment, because we might lose that 50 years, which is an important thing and may not be as many sob stories as the country has. Mr. Ngoro, let me come back to you. I know that you've been having activities. The School of Law has been having activities. The moot I talked about on Friday, and other activities for. What is the promise? Have you kept that promise?
Maybe before I answer that question, allow me, on behalf of the School of Law, to express our condolences based on the information you've given us. The late Honorable Nyombi is an alumnus of Makerere University Law School. The records, to my information, he should have graduated around 1979. I will really pray that the good Lord may comfort the family. But Charles, for the benefit of the viewers, as the School of Law, indeed, as you rightly pointed out, we've made 50 years. We couldn't let this year pass without some kind of celebrations. And naturally, in life, when you make 50 years, it's a good thing. It does not mean achievement. We are talking about a School of Law which started off in a very humble way with about 17 students and core staff of slightly under 8, and grown over from a department to now we boast of about 5 departments. You are aware about that. Commercial law, human rights and peace center, law and jurisprudence, and public and cooperative law. So we come out openly to take stock, to audit ourselves, but also, most importantly, to tell the general public and all Ugandans that the law school approach to legal education has changed tremendously from what it was when perhaps it just started. We now approach teaching of law from a stakeholder social approach. So
what does that mean?
Well, I'm going to explain that in a moment. So what we mean by stakeholder social approach is that what society perceives of us, what society expects of us, is very critical. The way we run the School of Law is certainly of interest to the general public. The general public expects us to meet certain standards.
So produce a certain caliber of citizens.
Exactly. My senior colleague and teacher, Godba, was saying the quality of lawyers has changed from perhaps what it was during their time. Now, as a teacher of law, that's not a comment to ignore. So that's what I mean by a stakeholder social approach. What the prospective employer says about our products is very critical. What a prospective client says about our product is very critical. That helps us to realign our course content, and perhaps it explains what Godba is not very happy about. That we had to introduce some of these interventions, including pre-entry. It's a response to some of these
concerns.
Exactly. But just allow me to say that besides the core teaching, we have had other interventions to try again and make our students more relevant, more practical in approach to resolving legal issues. We now have outreach programs. We have a number of projects. There's a disability project, I think, headed by the immediate former dean, the principal of the School of Law, Dr. Najita. We now have PILAC, Public Interest Litigation Clinic. And in PILAC, we have an accredited law office. So again, we should be able to render pro bono services to a targeted group of people. So this has arisen because of our change in the way we teach law. We think that we can, besides teaching law, be able to render some services along the known service providers. Lastly, we are also focusing very much on graduate training. I think the School of Law now at Makerere boasts of the highest number of professors. You know this, and perhaps doctoral holders. So we think that if that human resource is utilized, we will be able to deliver on our mandate of teaching, research and training in matters of law in this country.
Okay.
And then we'll be able to, but just allow me comment on this, that in case I don't have the opportunity. So as I said, 50 years, there's reason to celebrate. We will be outlining our challenges, perhaps
you are alive to your challenges, you say?
Yes, but we will be sharing more detail, perhaps in the print media and so forth. But what I just wanted to say is this, that we are going to crown these celebrations this coming week with a dinner. It's going to be presided over by one of our alumnus, a top figure in this country, no less than the Honorable the Chief Justice. So I'm calling upon all the alumni, including my former teacher, Godba, to find some time. I mean, if the Chief Justice
is on the other side, because
if the Chief Justice is finding time.
I actually went to UC.
Yes.
Oh,
But a well-wisher.
No, but I also studied at Makerere.
Yes.
Political science. At Makerere.
But even some of us will be there not because of the Chief Justice, but because we are alumni.
You'll not
So
fire
but
another
Charles,
Nyerere later.
but Charles, we will also be launching the School of Law Endowment Fund.
Okay.
This fund.
That's an interesting thing, by the way.
I think
Let
that's
me
a
ask,
great
because
idea, yeah.
the School of Law was founded, the first would be equivalent of a principal of the School of Law was Professor Ali Mazrui. He since died.
Dean of Social Sciences.
Yes, he was Dean of Social Sciences as a department in the School of Social Sciences.
Yeah.
When he returned, you're talking about launching an endowment fund. But Mazrui came here. I remember I saw him because he came through here. He endowed a chair at School of Social Sciences, which is now College of Social Sciences. Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you get him at that time to do that at School of Law?
A good question, but perhaps it wasn't time good enough for us to take that approach. But just to allow me conclude, this endowment fund, we hope to utilize these funds in building capacity, especially in terms of research and perhaps personnel, in order to improve on the rankings and rating of the School of Law. And then Thursday, this week, which is also 11th, we shall be having a public lecture on the role of the School of Law in promoting human rights in this country. And again, we are very honored to be hosting one of most illustrious alumnus in the person of the Supreme Court Judge, the Honorable Lady Justice Professor Lilian Tibatema Kirekubinza. She will be with us in the main hall on Thursday. So I just want to appeal to all the alumni of Makerere University School of Law. Please come back home, meet a friend, rejoice, and support the cause. It's worth. It's really worth.
Good, but just wondering if there are some alumni who will want to box each other and say, we didn't study these things together.
Excuse me, Charles.
Yes.
May I respond to Godfrey's comment on...
Godba.
Sorry.
No,
Godba,
no
sorry.
worries, no worries.
It's all right.
Okay. You talked about the security agencies being prison warders during elections. I don't see how that is the case, because even if they're there, they're first of all there to provide security, and secondly, in the by-elections there have been instances where the opposition has won. So if they were intimidating people, opposition would never have won. Then concerning the presidential elections, we have international observers who write reports. So I just don't agree with... Why are you laughing?
No,
Why is that funny to you? You know, if Ugandans were not free, I mentioned earlier, people have the... Is it freedom to vote for who they want? Is that what you're talking about? Or freedom of... Which freedom do you feel is being curtailed? Exactly.
You want me to respond?
Yeah, I do want you to
it's a question.
respond.
You
Which
should
freedom
respond to it.
exactly? Because my understanding from the direction you've taken this whole conversation, you're just focusing on politics. When I talk about development, it's like you push it under the rugs. It's like it's not
No, Joseph,
and it's important.
Let me tell you that countries are judged in their transformation not by the number of roads and the size of bridges and the sizes of factories that they build. No, countries are judged by the quality of human capital that you have. So you don't make a big difference having roads built by Chinese money, by Chinese labor, using Chinese technology. You don't make a big difference. Yes, it's fine to have a road, but if you look at Kampala Expressway, Entebbe Expressway, probably costed, I think, if I remember, about $380 million. You would want first of all go and calculate how much of that money went back to China, and secondly, how many jobs did this road create, and you can do it for every other project. So while I totally celebrate the accomplishments that we have made in terms of infrastructure, I think that as a country, we are lacking focus in terms of putting emphasis on our human resource. We've concentrated a lot in terms of mass literacy, mass production, but we want the best engineers in this world. We want to produce the best doctors. We want to produce the best lawyers. We want the next... rather than the president commissioning a factory to assemble computers and whatever, we want to be producing computers. And we can do it. We just need to put our minds to it, do the right things at the right time. But I think that especially for President Museveni, who is your employer, that because he
works for the government of Uganda, not for President Museveni.
No, the media center people work for President Museveni as far as we're concerned.
President Museveni's workers are in Wachitura and in Chisozi.
No. You see, in political science, there's what we call prebendarism. Yeah, you get, if you are a ruling party, you get your people, you put them in official public service positions, and they work for you, and you can count many of those. But essentially, the point I want to make is that as a country, we've made all this progress. The challenge that we have is that we continue to judge ourselves by looking at where we've come from and not where we should be. I think that this country, endowed as it is, very, very, very rich in terms of natural resources, in terms of hardworking people, very resilient. This country should be going to the moon at this time, 56 years later. And I think that's our failure as far as I'm concerned. And we haven't lost everything, but you need a transformative leadership that is able to reignite the ingenuity and innovativeness of a society, and that we lack for now.
Have you been answered? Does that provide an answer to the
I'm
question?
glad that he has acknowledged infrastructure development, and from what he said, I think he wants us to invest more in education, right?
Oh, yeah, that's
because
one
if
of
you
the
talk
things,
about
yeah.
human capital,
Yeah.
you're talking about education. And I agree that we need to improve. There, like UPE, can it be improved? USC can be improved.
Our time is running out. We need to get
Yes.
out of here. So I'm going to start from the extreme end with Christopher, and then come this way. I'll have an opinion to share at the end of the show. Your last word on Uganda at 56 and Uganda at 56.
And of course, Makerere.
Yes.
I also have a comment. For me, I think Uganda at 56 has been, it has been about fiction. We have a fiction of a state called Uganda, but ideally when you move throughout the country, you'll find that there are very many countries within Uganda in terms of socio-economic aspects of it. And that is actually why we talk about the North-South divide. There is a totally different country and actually another country that you see when you move around. Jiggers somewhere and hearts and all these kind of things, which I think we have actually not yet invested in nation building. And I think actually post-independence should have ushered in an opportunity for us to build the state and create that oneness. And another thing also, there is also that fiction that we are actually independent. Our economic trajectory from actually independence was shaped by other actors. For example, World Bank told us implement structural adjustment policies, implement all these policies. So I think because of that aspect, we can't say we are independent when our economic policies are. And then also on the issue of education, you remember very well that we've really had education which has been promoting social interaction. But our education system, those traditional schools like maybe St. Leo's, those other schools like Laibi College, Kilgum High, which promoted that interaction, have also died out. And worst of all, also we are now even creating tribal universities. You hear that you hear that there is a university in a particular region, which is because the people in that region demand that we also want a university, and so they give them a tribal university. Then Gulu says, this is Acholi University, Gulu University. Then Teso say, we also want Teso University, Busoga University. So it actually defeats the whole purpose of traditional education, which is to integrate and interact and create interaction.
I'm going to cut short your time, so you may not comment on Makerere Law School because our time is up.
Okay.
And Mr. Ngoro, unfortunately, your right to frame your own conclusion is being taken away because Henry Mutebe has a question for you. So you're going to respond to Henry Mutebe's question. He says, I wish to learn from the Lord on, given the global hegemonic architecture of legal education in the world, how has the School of Law tried to indigenize legal education in Uganda to ensure that it addresses the epistemistic injustice meted on African students that have to endure years of legal education that is highly colonial in content and practice? Is Uganda legal education Ugandan in any dimension? What dimensions of independence have been built into our legal education to bring to the fore indigenous knowledge? Has legal education in Uganda achieved independence from the colonial fold? So you might have to answer the last question.
My colleague says he wants
No, actually, by the way, I am associated to Makerere School of Law. I have been I researched with Refugee Law Project at Makerere University. And in regard to that question, Makerere University has actually been at the center of research on traditional justice. Perhaps during the Northern Uganda conflict and the agenda, when there was that agenda item number 3 on the question of what form of justice can promote peace and accountability. And so there was that debate that does traditional justice actually measure up to international standards? So I think Makerere University has really provided cutting-edge studies to clarify on the issue of traditional justice or justice according to the customs of the people. That is the only response I can give, then you can take on from
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Charles. As maybe in response to Mr. Mutebi's question, very briefly, we do curricular review annually, and that is intended to measure the relevance of our content. So that's an opportunity for us to, to check ourselves what we are giving to the students is relevant and etc. But we also do research. You see, we go on fact-finding mission. But in conclusion, Charles, thanks again for inviting us. But as a School of Law, we will continue to make our contribution, however small that it may be, towards consolidating the rule of law, participatory democracy, respect for institutions, fairness, and respect for human rights in the judicial system.
Thank you.
That will continue to. Lastly, we shall be guided in all our actions, again, by the interests of our stakeholders. We commit we will be able to address those in the course of our work.
We'll give you the leg room to first enjoy the celebration,
yes.
And then we'll invite you back to ask if you had questions.
Thank you.
Josepha, your last word.
Thank you very much.
I think we should be optimistic about the future.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Godba? Godba, before you say, let me read a message from Gift in Nansana. Gift says, out of the 56 years of Uganda's independence, Mr. Museveni and his colleagues have eaten 32. When he was taking the oath of office, he said that Africa's problem was that its leaders stayed in power for too long, thereby encouraging impunity, corruption, and chronism. And unfortunately, he has exactly done the same. In the olden days, the colonialists used crude methods of literally stealing resources and taking over leadership positions while making Africans subordinate and slaves. With the introduction of OTT, mobile money, and many more taxes by the NRM regime, and now with the distribution of sacks of money by the president to Bazukulu, some of whom are older than him. The only difference with the colonialists is that they were able to provide good services to Ugandans. Gift in Nansana. That's his verdict. God, by your last word on this.
If I can make 2 quick comments. One, to congratulate the law school on the 50-year anniversary. I definitely, personally, enjoyed my life at law school. The 3 years, that time we were still doing 3 years. Law had not become so complicated to require 4 years.
You cheated us.
Yeah. No, and
We are paying for the extra year.
Yeah, I also enjoyed because I was the president of Makerere Law Society then, and we really had a wonderful time and brought around many innovations. Secondly, I think right now, sitting outside in the public arena, I think that the law school, especially in terms of the socio-political life of this country, the law school seems to be the only living organism at Makerere. On the big questions of the day, especially regarding constitutionalism and politics, it is only the law school and the professors at the law school that seem to come out to at least make positions and make arguments and even participate in some judicial activism. The political science department, which used to be the harbinger of all this activity, seems to have completely gone asleep in terms of engaging with the political questions of the day. As far as the 56 years of independence is concerned, I really would want to challenge ourselves as Ugandans that the anniversary, I don't think that the anniversary just needs to be a ceremony for awarding medals, as has always been the case, a ceremony for just celebrating the so many things that have been done, because those we have done so far. For me, this anniversary should be about, one, how do we liberate ourselves from the bondage that we are in as a people? Because I think at different levels, in different dimensions, we are in bondage. We are a country that is divided ethnically. We are economically. The economic geography of this country has shifted so fundamentally that you have regions that have been marginalized economically. Constitutionally, I think we have overthrown our constitution. So for me, this anniversary should be a moment for Ugandans to reflect and say we need to reclaim our sovereignty as articulated under Article 1 of the Constitution. And that we are not going to be given by anybody or by people who are in government or even by opposition political parties. That we can only claim by ourselves.
Thank you.
And for me, that would be the biggest message.
Gentlemen and lady, our time is out. We need to get out of here. I think if Uganda at 56, if we stop giving excuses about ourselves as a people, and we focus really, we don't set our bar so low.
Yes.
I had this argument with leaders at the Smart Partnership Dialogue a few years ago, and I said, a reverse dialogue, and I was telling the presidents, I think President Museveni had issues, had issue with me, starting with King Muswati and former president of Tanzania, Jakaya Kikwete. And my argument was, we set our bar so low since independence.
Yeah.
And we have cried the excuse of colonialism for way too long. That at 56 years, Josepha, you make a good list of achievements. I think those achievements are too few for this country. If you were 56 years old, and these are what you're listing as achievements, 26% connection to the national electricity grid, yes, 24% to the national grid. You're talking about a few roads, one express road that has just been completed and has put a burden of debt on Ugandans for the next so many years, accessing the only what we call international airport, which I think should actually, with the improvements, it will become an international airport, but the old thing should have been somewhere in Bundewuju at the border with Congo to facilitate that movement. This country is capable of a lot more than we're doing today. And we're not doing it because we prefer to give a lot of excuses. We're like a child who was born either as an orphan or of a drunk father, and you keep saying, you see my father, you see my father. You can't be at 56 years and say, you see, the problem was my father. Your father did his part and failed his things. But I think as we go into this 56 years of independence, celebration is very little. Challenging ourselves is what we should be focusing on as a country. And for the law school at 50 years, congratulations, 50 years of legal education. Like Godba says, I think the heartbeat, if you're looking for a pulse, you'd still find it somewhere at the law school. And you'd scan with a lot of difficulty to find a functional pulse that you can resuscitate with the rest of the country. Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for making time for the show. Thank you very much to all our viewers for joining us tonight. And always, thank you very much for the feedback that you give us and for watching the show. The debate continues on our social media platforms, especially Twitter, Facebook, and on WhatsApp. For those I have seen debating on WhatsApp, they say Godba has officially launched People Power. I don't know whether you belong to that on some group. I've seen that. And we extend our condolences to the family of Peter Nyombi. It's a sad loss for the country. His time will be audited in subsequent discussions. We will not be able to do that tonight. Our job was to announce the information we received, and that is the sad passing of Mr. Peter Nyombi, the former Attorney General. He became Attorney General in 2011. And of course, the debate will be out on how his time was as Attorney General. Thank you very much, and have a good night.